The House COVID Committee holds its second hearing on the origins of the pandemic. This on the heels of a new Senate report which shows the possibility of 2 lab leaks in China. And the star witness today, former DNI head John Ratcliffe. He says a leak is the only explanation. Beijing already firing back. The hearing starts in 30 minutes. We'll keep an eye on that coming up for you. But first, there is this. Sounding the alarm on government surveillance, Elon Musk says that your government had full access to your private tweets, whether you knew it or not. And that's just the tip of this tweet iceberg, as we say hello on a Tuesday. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to the program. Big 2 hours here.
That'd be a tweetberg?
That could be a tweetberg.
All right, I'm Dana Perino. This is America's Newsroom. That big interview aired last night. Elon Musk claiming that before he bought Twitter, the company gave unfettered access to both U.S. and foreign intelligence agencies. He says he is working on a way to encrypt those messages to protect users' privacy.
So Musk also shedding light on how he managed the slash staffing at Twitter in an effort to turn a profit, which has not been easy. Here's what he told Tucker on that.
How do you run the company with only 20% of the staff?
It turns out you don't need all that many people to run Twitter.
But 80%? That's a lot.
Yes. If you're not trying to run some sort of glorified activist organization and you're not care that much about censorship, then you can really let go of a lot of people.
Grady Trimble has more from Capitol Hill this morning. Hi, Grady.
Hi, Dana. The fact that the federal government and other governments had access to Twitter users' private messages, their DMs, came as a shock not just to those who use the platform, but also to Elon Musk himself.
The degree to which various government agencies had effectively had full access to everything that was going on Twitter blew my mind. I was not aware of that.
Would that include people's DMs?
Yes.
The Twitter files and the subsequent hearings on Capitol Hill revealed the cozy relationship between the government and the social media company before Musk took over. After this direct messages revelation, Republicans want to find out whether that's also the case with other tech platforms.
Raises an obvious question about the rest of big tech. Is Google allowing the federal government to monitor Gmail? Is Facebook allowing the federal government to monitor Messenger and WhatsApp? Big tech needs to be accountable. Are they helping the government spy on the American citizens?
Musk has said in the past and reiterated in his interview with Tucker that he wants to make direct messages encrypted, as you noted. That way, the federal government and even Twitter employees would not have access to users' DMs. Dana?
Okay, Grady Trimble, thank you on Capitol Hill today.
Michael Schellenberger, co-reporter of the Twitter Files. And Michael, good morning to you. Welcome to our coverage here. I'll play another clip in a moment here. But what did you think of last night and what he revealed to the American people?
I mean, it's all very shocking. I mean, we were in the process of reporting on the Twitter Files, and we knew that the Twitter staff was being very biased in their censoring of ordinary Americans for saying things like a woman is not a man or a man is not a woman. We also know that there were strong efforts by government funded agencies to try to censor people for just expressing, for describing vaccine side effects. And so I think it's really quite disturbing. You know, we're about to make a big call for more whistleblowers to come forward. We need more people inside the social media companies to come forward. I mean, I think people don't really appreciate how close we came to really having government censorship of all the major social media platforms. If it hadn't been for Elon Musk buying Twitter, we would never have realized how close we came to I think what can genuinely be called a kind of totalitarianism.
Tucker asked him about, laying off 80% of the staff and still being able to run Twitter in the way that he wants to. With all of those people that were laid off, in your reporting, did you have any sense of how many people had this kind of access and if they were in particular doing anything specific with it?
It's hard to know. I think it's telling, though, that the former chief counsel to the FBI went to Twitter to be deputy chief counsel. And one of the things I keep hearing in my research on this is that nobody ever leaves the intelligence community. We kept seeing the FBI badgering Twitter for more information. We also saw former FBI employees like Clint Watts, running disinformation campaigns, claiming that there were Russian bots. In fact, they were ordinary citizens on Twitter, using that to sort of discredit particularly Trump voters, people on the populist right. And so, yeah, I mean, you would just see, it's a little bit like what Elon said, is that there was just a lot of discussion by mid-level, junior, senior employees over who should be censored, whether they should be censored. And my assumption is that the senior staff had access to all of those DMs. And then when you saw that level of federal, when you see that level of interaction with federal law enforcement agencies, it's not a hard stretch to imagine that they had access to the DMs.
Let's see where that goes. He wants to encrypt those DMs, as Dana mentioned a moment ago. Just play clip number 4, guys. This is on AI. He thinks he can make a better model that is more trustworthy, I think is the words that he uses. Watch.
I'm going to start something which I know you could call truth GBT, or a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. And I think this might be the best path to safety, in the sense that an AI that cares about understanding the universe is unlikely to annihilate humans, because we are an interesting part of the universe.
Michael, I don't know how much you've gone into this yet, but do you think that is possible?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think Elon is having a very good moment here. I mean, online, the BBC reporter could not give a single instance. I think you saw Musk opening up and raising the alarm about AI appropriately. I think the other interesting thing is that Musk called for government regulation. That's not something that you hear from big CEOs of big tech companies. CEOs don't like regulation. He said it's a big pain, but here we are with this very radical technology that we truly don't understand, including the people that created the technology don't understand. So I think, credit to Elon for, I think, raising the alarm and calling for a pretty moderate regulatory solution, and revealing, the extent to which you have bad government involvement, illegal potentially government involvement in Twitter, and then you also have a need for government involvement in regulating AI. So I think we all have to mature a little bit and evolve a bit to deal with some of the complexity created by these new technologies.
Michael Schellenberger, always good to have you to start us off today with a lot to think about.
Yeah, thank you,
a lot of
Michael.
food for thought there. Thank you.
Yeah, part 2 coming up tonight. If you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to check it out. When you sit there, Dana, and listen to Elon Musk talk, and you think about how many big projects he's behind in American life, SpaceX and Tesla and Twitter and artificial intelligence, the questions are thin, because you want to hear what he has to say about all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Tucker's program went an hour last night. We'll see how much he airs tonight, but this could go for 6 hours. And I think you would still be enthralled with how much is in his head and how much he's thinking about and how much he shapes our lives today and will continue to for a long time in the future.
Indeed. All right. Well, religious freedom now on the docket. The Supreme Court hearing oral arguments today in a workplace discrimination case. An evangelical Christian mail carrier claiming that the U.S. Postal Service refused his request not to work on Sundays. That's based on his faith. Shannon Bream is live at the Supreme Court. And Shannon, how might this court rule on this that would have been different from, say, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, Dana, what they've got to do is weed through old cases to decide how to apply the law to this case with Gerald Groff. He was a mail carrier. He started out filling in for other people's shifts. He was kind of a backup, but he told them from the beginning when he started working that he didn't want to work on Sundays. For him, he observes it as the Sabbath. And so for a while that worked out. But there came a point, if you'll remember, when Amazon started working with the Postal Service to have Sunday deliveries. And what that meant is they needed more people on deck to work on Sundays. They worked around this for a little while with an accommodation. If he could find people to cover their shifts, or if they could find people to cover the shifts, then he could still continue to take Sunday as a Sabbath. There was a lot of back and forth with the Postal Service until it came to a head. He began to get in trouble for not working on Sundays. They said it put a burden on the employer to constantly cover for him. And so that's the question we get to. He ultimately thought, I'm about to get fired. He resigned instead. And we end up here years later at the Supreme Court. It's about what constitutes an undue hardship on the employer. Did they have have to continue to find people to cover a shift. Things changed from when he started working there, and Sundays weren't an issue. So the court has old precedent to look at, and it's been problematic trying to decide what undue hardship means. Employers will say, you know, this became a hassle. Every week we were forcing other employees to work these shifts. It wasn't workable. Is that enough? I mean, the law says that you can't discriminate against someone based on their religion, and that's what Gerald Groff is saying happened here. Now it's up to these 9 justices. I'll head in just a minute for arguments, and we'll see how this plays out today between the 9 justices who may have very different viewpoints on who's the winner in this case. Dana?
Shannon Bream at her home away from home. Thank you, Shannon.
That's right. See you later.
The President of the United States is going to have a very hard time explaining how so many of his family members have received so much money from our adversaries around the world.
The House Republicans now making new claims about 9 members of the Biden family that they have found, they believe, have made money off suspicious business dealings from around the world. So, question today, is the investigation heating up, and what can they prove? We'll check that out.
And as we mark Tax Day in America, what the IRS is doing with that $80 billion budget boost, we have the disturbing details.
Ron DeSantis rubbing elbows on the Hill. Are more Republicans flocking to his corner? We'll check in on that, too, coming up. Russia, a Moscow court today upholding the detention of Evan Gershkovich. He's the Wall Street Journal reported about 2 weeks ago, arrested about 2 weeks ago, denied bail, remains in custody for trial. This is the first time we've seen him in public since his arrest last month. Gershkovich, the Journal, and the U.S. all deny the allegations, look good in court. Seem to be a positive sign, I would say. Stay strong. A lot of people pulling for you. The U.S. designated him as wrongfully detained and calling for his immediate release. We will stay on his case as it goes.
Absolutely. Well, the House Judiciary Committee holding a hearing in Manhattan on New York City's rising crime and taking aim at far-left District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Democrats calling it nothing more than a political stunt.
Republican witnesses who have used their time to criticize District Attorney Bragg have served as props in a MAGA Broadway production.
But the mother of an Army veteran who was stabbed and killed in New York City is taking on that congressman. She says he and others need a reality check.
Challenge this gentleman, Hank Johnson, to step 1 foot in the hood. Step 1 foot in the hood. He is a rich black man that's telling poor black men that they're props and that the crime and the things that they're experiencing it's not as bad as they think that they are. Not just him, all the elected officials, you know, all of them, especially the ones that are running New York.
And we will hear much more from Madeleine Brame when she joins us live next hour. I'm so looking forward to talking to her. And she said something interesting about just the listening part. Like, what is the harm as a member of Congress to come up and actually listen to the witnesses who are there, especially ones who have gone through what she's gone through?
Looking forward to meeting her in person. I mean, her personal story is extraordinary, how she lost her son and the way the prosecution was carried out. She's got some big issues with that, so she's coming up next hour.
So we will look forward to having you here, Madeleine. Well, it's tax day. The deadline to file your returns comes as the IRS goes on a hiring spree thanks to President Biden's spending bill. The National Review reports the agency's $80 billion windfall will put the focus on enforcement. And it says the mainstream media played fast and loose with the truth about that. Joining us now is Mitch Rochelle, a former partner at PwC and founding partner at Macro Trends Advisors. Wonderful to have you. Good to see you. I've missed your face. So tell us, just remind us, what did the Biden administration said they wanted to do with these IRS agents?
Really, Dana, what they want to do is run down tax cheats. They feel there's a tremendous amount of lost revenue in the billions of dollars because people aren't truthful in filing their tax returns. That requires 2 things. It requires people and it requires technology. And they haven't really beefed up any of those things yet. The technology spend is going to be massive and probably take 10 years to get implemented. And the people, they want to increase their workforce by 50% in 3 years. That's great. But, you know, I come from that world and I know the big accounting firms are struggling to find talent. I can't imagine how the government is going to hire people at a lower pay scale.
Let's put that up for everybody. As you mentioned, from Politico, call for number one. The IRS aims to employ 105,187 workers by 2025. I mean, that's a huge number, to increase by 50% within 3 years to workforce levels not seen for a quarter century. One of the things they promised was that middle-class taxpayers would not see any effect from this. How do you think that looks now?
Yeah, I don't think that that's the case. If they can do what they say they're going to do, and they can match up people's banking information, assuming the banks will provide it, with what's reflected on their tax returns, they're going to find discrepancies. They're going to need people to, conduct those audits. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be the people making over $400,000 a year that are going to get, letters from the IRS. I think it's going to be virtually, every taxpayer that's going to get a letter about some discrepancy. So the middle class are probably going to feel it the most. And it's really a big departure from the messaging from the administration.
One of the things that happened over the weekend, I read this article about an audit of the IRS, and they found that the technology that they're using there is so antiquated that it's probably costing taxpayers even more money just to try to deal with that.
Right. And there's only one silver lining in all of this. People who file tax returns for a living, who have to call the help center, or even taxpayers who have to call the help center, for the last several years, they just waited on hold endlessly. The good news is they have staffed up the call center so people at least can get their questions answered. But you mentioned technology. I mean, I know this from advising businesses for decades. When companies decide to upgrade their technology in the private sector, it's a very long, laborious, expensive process. When the government decides to do it, it's even longer, and it often doesn't happen as expected. So
yeah, and by the time they do that, it's outdated. Janet Yellen,
right,
the Treasury
100%,
Secretary,
yeah.
this is what she said in August of 2022, so about a year ago. She said the Inflation Reduction Act provides the IRS what it's needed for years, a stable stream of mandatory funding that will allow the agency to serve American taxpayers the way they deserve. And I know that they are pointing to more calls being answered, and I'm sure if you're trying to call the IRS that is a little bit of a comfort. But as a last question to you, Mitch, just talk a little bit about how the Inflation Reduction Act, which hasn't actually been true to its name in terms of reducing inflation, and the overall tax burdens in this country, what kind of a drag is that on economic growth overall right now?
Well, I'll just give you a statistic. It was in today's New York Post, which thankfully I still get at my door in Florida, which is the average household is paying $4,800 a year more in tax burden than they were pre-pandemic. So if the average household is paying more in taxes and they have less money to, pump into the economy, then the reality is it's going to hurt the economy. And that's the harsh reality of all of this.
That's just black and white mathematics right there. Mitch Rochelle, all right, we will wish everyone well on this tax day, and thanks for coming on the show. Yeah, go mail that.
This isn't just about the president's son or the president's brother. We've identified 6 new Biden family members involved in shady foreign transactions that we believe were a direct result of influence peddling.
That's James Comer. James Comer is the House Oversight Committee chair, promising to keep digging into the Biden family overseas dealings and whether or not foreign adversaries targeted them. That, of course, could pose a threat to national security. From the North Lawn at the White House, Jackie Heinrich has that story for us today. And Jackie, hello. Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Bill. The House Oversight Committee chairman said that the Treasury Department made thousands of pages of financial records available connected to the Biden family, their companies, and their associates. And after viewing them, he said, quote, the Biden family enterprise is centered on Joe Biden's political career and connections, and it has generated an exorbitant amount of money for the Biden family. The Oversight Committee will continue to pursue additional bank records to follow the Biden's tangled web of financial transactions to determine if the Biden family has been targeted by foreign actors and if there's a national security threat. House Oversight Democrats, though, they are downplaying the significance of these revelations, saying that once again, this probe uncovers zero evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, and, quote, committee Republicans continue to mischaracterize suspicious activity reports as evidence of misconduct or criminality instead of calling them what they are, unsubstantiated tips that rarely result in any follow-up by law enforcement. But House Republicans are not being dissuaded here, vowing to keep digging.
From what we could tell, you have many members of the family who've been involved in this, getting money. This money appears to be coming from Chinese companies, Russian companies, and some other places around the world. This is not good. This is actually a very serious thing, and it's a web of corruption.
Neither the White House nor the Treasury Department responded to requests for comment from Fox News, but this follows news from last month that members of the Biden family received more than $1 million in payouts related to Hunter Biden's business associate Rob Walker and their Chinese business ventures in 2017. That's according to records obtained by House Oversight. A spokesman for Hunter's legal team last month confirmed those payments, but stressed that they belonged to Hunter, his uncle, and Hallie, Beau Biden's widow, nobody else. And in the meantime, federal authorities are still conducting their probe of Hunter Biden's tax affairs. That is being overseen by a Trump-appointed judge in Delaware.
Wow.
Bill.
Well, to follow, we're going to put some of these questions to Jonathan Turley coming up next hour. Thank you, Jackie.
Fox News Alert: 2 Chinese-American men arrested and charged with working for Beijing right here on U.S. soil. They've been granted bail, despite prosecutors saying the two are part of a larger ring of Chinese operatives. Plus, an Illinois congressman says the weekend teen takeover of Chicago is an embarrassment for the city and state. So why are some leaders defending the chaos?
There are a few that came with different intentions, and they have and they will be dealt with. But I'm not going to use your language, which I think is...
Report raising the possibility of not one, but 2 lab leaks. China's already angry. Former DNI John Ratcliffe testifies today. He's the star witness, so we will keep an eye on that as it gets underway on the Hill. All right, there's this from New York.
It is our belief that the ultimate purpose of this illegal police station was not to protect and serve, but rather silence, harass, and threaten individuals here in the United States.
The FBI arresting 2 men in New York City yesterday, accusing them of setting up a secret police station in Manhattan's Chinatown. And that was to spy on critics of the Chinese government. Nate Foy live in New York City with more on this. Hi, Nate.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, both those men are U.S. citizens, both residents of New York, and both are free men today. They were let out on bail after appearing in federal court in Brooklyn. They did have to surrender their passports, and they have limited financial capabilities right now. But the government did not seek their detention, so neither of them are locked up. Take a look at this video. You see one of the defendants leaving court in Brooklyn yesterday. Both these men accused of not only running this secret police station in Manhattan's Chinatown, but also destroying evidence of their communications with Chinese officials. So, Dana, right now, the extent of their cooperation and the operations in this secret police station has yet to be revealed. I want to show you behind me this building with the lettering. You can see reports are the 3rd floor of this building for months last year is where this operation was taking place. Behind these walls, a concerted effort to track down Chinese dissidents and in some cases threaten them. U.S. officials pointed to one specific example where a woman who was born in China but was living in California was tracked down as a result of the efforts in this building. But that was only part of what we learned yesterday. We also learned that the Chinese government used 44 people, many of them MPS officers, to create fake social media accounts and spread disinformation and anything that the Chinese Communist Party does not like. Now, on top of that, there was an employee at Zoom who was accused of using his position, Dana, to censor political discourse. Back out here live, of those 44 people in the second part of this investigation that I just outlined, none of them have been arrested. All but one live in China. The 2 people arrested for running this police station face up to 25 years in prison. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Nate Foy, thank you.
So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis making his way to Capitol Hill today, where he used to be a congressman. Speculation growing for 2024. He's joining some Republican members of Congress in an event hosted there by a conservative group. Could be a sign that he's gaining support on the Hill as an alternative to former President Trump. One lawmaker taking part in today's event with DeSantis, Illinois Congressman Darren LaHood with me now. And sir, good morning to you. Just about a month ago, this is what our poll showed. Trump at 54%, DeSantis at 24% among Republican presidential nominees. Is this a sign today that you support DeSantis? Why don't we start there?
Well, listen, I served with Ron DeSantis in the House, Bill, from 2015 to 2018. So I know Ron. We're happy to welcome him back to Capitol Hill today with a number of my other colleagues. He's been one of the strongest conservative voices across this country, and he's really done remarkable work in Florida, right? Best economy in the country, 50-year low in crime, what he did through COVID. It's remarkable. And to be honest with you, Bill, I'm jealous coming from a state like Illinois, where we continue to hemorrhage people out of Illinois because of high taxes, high crime, the way we handled COVID. People are going to Florida. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from Governor DeSantis today and looking forward to having him back in D.C.
I didn't hear a commitment on your part. That's fine. But Greg Steube is a congressman out of Florida, as you well know. He has now, over the past 24 hours, joined 5 members from the Florida congressional delegation that support Donald Trump. Seems that he's building his own support as well, huh?
Well, Governor DeSantis hasn't announced that he's going to run for president. That time will come, I'm sure. Today is just an opportunity, again, to hear the great success story that Governor DeSantis has had in Florida, and for my colleagues to get reacquainted with him today, and looking forward to having that conversation.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, you mentioned crime in your first answer. Can we talk about your town of Chicago, back in your home state, and what happened this past weekend? We talked about, go to number 3, guys, a state senator, Robert Peters, whose district is the Chicago area. He said, I would look at the behavior of young people as a political act and statement. It's a mass protest against poverty and segregation. Is that how you saw the events of this past weekend, with hundreds in downtown Chicago ripping through that city?
Not at all, Bill. This is an embarrassment to the city of Chicago. It's an embarrassment to the state of Illinois. This type of violence from youth running through Chicago, unfortunately, this is becoming more and more routine, Bill. I spent 10 years as a state and federal prosecutor. I worked as a prosecutor in Chicago. This is simply unacceptable, but yet we have Democratic elected leaders in Chicago that continue to do nothing about it. We are losing families. We are losing businesses out of Chicago. When you have police that are demoralized because of the policies of the current mayor and the state's attorney there, it's ridiculous.
So the mayor-elect is Brandon Johnson. All right. You heard what he said, right? I'll just refresh your memory. I in no way condone the destructive activity. However, it's not constructive to demonize youth who have otherwise been starved of opportunities in their own community. So he's going to be the next mayor. And he's talked a lot about social services and raising taxes. What's the fate of that town then?
Well, I worry about it. When you have a mayor coming in that refuses to support law enforcement, I mean, talk to any police officer in Chicago, Bill. They're literally demoralized because none of these people that were involved in the violence you just showed there get arrested. They don't have to show up in court. No one gets charged. And he's talking about having safe places for youth. You have to listen to law enforcement. This happens so routinely in Chicago now. Look at other states, look at other cities, what they've done. Support law enforcement, listen to law enforcement. That's what needs to be done here. But unfortunately, I think it's going the wrong direction, and we're going to continue to see people react with their feet in leaving Chicago for other states like Florida, where they support law enforcement and they don't let this ridiculousness go on.
Well, that may be the outcome of this. Darren LaHood, thanks for coming on, Republican from Illinois. We'll watch Ron DeSantis on the Hill with you today, and we'll see what comes from it. Thank you, sir, for your time. You bet. Thank you.
HP, normal attack. Summons spear beast that deals damage enemy and hit or restores HP. Okay. Some beast. Hmm. Okay.